Dr. Copeman, you used the word trust. The assurance that Americans have when we talk about autonomous vehicles, trust becomes a very important issue. I want to thank the advocates for highway and auto safety. Kathy Chase, who's here in the audience, who has done a lot of work talking about what we need to do to make our highways safer. But I want to ask you, Doctor, at this point, do you feel that we could be saying that autonomous vehicles are, in fact, safer than human drivers?
At this point, thank you for the question, Ms. Tchaikovsky.
Press the button.
It is on, yes. Where we are is that it's too soon to tell how it will turn out for fatalities. There's data saying it's a little bit safer, maybe it's not as safe for crashes, and we're going to see how that plays out. But it's way too soon to tell for fatalities. And the issue is that while human drivers absolutely make mistakes, computers make mistakes too. And the 94% number you recently heard, in the report that comes from, that's a NHTSA report, it says 94% involved some element of a human, but sometimes the human didn't clean up a mess. The very next sentence in that report says, this does not mean the driver was to blame. So it's important to realize the jury's still out. We have a long way to go to find out how this turns out for fatalities.
Let me also ask you this. You mentioned in your testimony a number of ways that AVs should be subjected to safety regulations. But let me ask you this. What are the kinds of things that Congress should be thinking about as a start, and the role that we can play right now in assuring the kind of trust and safety for autonomous vehicles?
I'll leave it up to you.
Well, I think that the main principles have to be transparency, accountability, and independent oversight. But for something very actionable, NHTSA already has an advance notice of proposed rulemaking from December 2020 that has a pretty good starting point for a framework, including requiring conforming to engineering safety standards, telling engineers how to get the design right to address things. And so just moving that ANPRM forward would provide a really robust platform to get consensus from both sides on how to provide. So people say we need a regulatory framework. We have one. It's been sitting there since December 2020. We need to move forward.
Thank you. I also just wanted you to comment on whether we should consider what could happen to the workforce as we move forward with autonomous vehicles, and if we should be working to do some legislation in that regard.
Absolutely. Any new technology will bring with it workforce disruptions. There are no exceptions. That just always happens. So I think it's really important to consider the workforce impact. There'll be jobs, no doubt. Eventually there'll be jobs lost, but there's going to be opportunities for a lot of new jobs, and in many cases much more highly skilled, better jobs that become available.
Thank you for that. I wanted to also add something to the record. Several transportation labor organizations have written letters that are calling on Congress to account for the potential loss of jobs, and I seek and I ask for unanimous consent to put 3 of them in the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Okay. Really, that's the gist of my questions. But what I would like you to there's a lot of sense of urgency in this room. How long do you have any projection? Do you see it will take us to get to the point that we can really move significantly forward?
I think there's 2 aspects to that. I'm talking about 5 or 10 or 25 years before we see the complete transition. That doesn't mean we have to wait that long to see benefit. We can see benefit essentially right away if we're careful to deploy the technology in niches where we can ensure that the public harm is not increased and that there's a public benefit. So it's absolutely fine to deploy the technology in a sensible, incremental way, making sure we do no harm as we do so. that can still proceed quite quickly, but it's going to need some regulatory frameworks to ensure that the industry is conforming to their very own industry engineering safety standards as they do it.
Thank you. I'm out of time. Incremental may be the word. Thank you. I yield back.